Hello, everyone, and welcome to Growing Together, a gardening podcast with me, John Lamb, and Don Kinsler, a lifelong gardener and the North Dakota State University Extension horticulturist for Cass County. Don, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm especially thrilled because this is the first time that I can remember in a fair number of years of gardening, vegetable gardening. This is the first time I can remember what is happening in my own vegetable garden. Okay, we delayed planting a little bit because, it's too cool and frosty, etc. But around Memorial Day, Mary and I got the vegetable garden planted, including tomatoes, peppers, carrots, the rows of beans and all that. And for the first time that I can remember, the vegetables are emerging from the soil before the weeds.
Oh, really?
For example, the peas, the beans, the beets, things that you see from seed. Obviously the tomatoes and all those that you put from transplants, they're up way ahead of the weeds. But the things that I seeded from seed, those popped out of the ground. Maybe it was because we delayed long enough that the soil was warm enough. And then since we hadn't had rain in the Fargo area, I did water after that. And I don't remember our vegetables emerging, including carrots, which can be a little finicky because the seed is so very, very fine. They can be a little finicky to get to emerge out of the garden soil. But everything emerged before the weeds, and so I could tell where all the rows were. So I've already gone through, and as the little weeds started emerging slower than the other things, I've been able to go through and hoe. And I don't recall that happening. I don't know if I just got really, really lucky. Usually the weeds emerge before most of the vegetables because that's what makes them good weeds.
Yep.
I have to hunt for the little emerging carrots in amongst the weeds, and
do you think
so it's easier. I don't know if the soil.
How do you think that is? The soil, or do you think
because the soil started out cold because we had a late spring, and then all of a sudden we had a week of 90s.
And do you think maybe because it was a little drier too, that the weeds weren't growing because they weren't getting a lot of moisture?
Could well be. Yep, there wasn't maybe enough moisture in, and so after I planted the garden and then sprinkled, it got the seeds growing. So anyway, I am tickled because
we're certainly not complaining about that.
Knock on wood, because it's doing well. How's everything in your yard doing? Anything blooming yet in the perennial garden?
Well, I mean, things like the bleeding hearts, the peonies are just about ready to burst.
Yeah,
I
ours
think,
too.
But haven't come forth yet. But things are looking pretty good. Seeing some places where maybe, like, again, we've overplanted some things now that they're coming into their maturity. The hostas, they can really overlap in a hurry. So they can.
Yeah. Did everything come through winter okay? Your perennials.
We lost a couple of things. And we lost a couple of things in this plot by the garage, and there was this area that there seemed to be a lot of things. We had some coneflowers that were there. We had a penstemon that was really that was there, that was established, and we lost it. And Sam was concerned that there was when she was digging it up, she found worms. She was concerned that they may be jumping worms. So we contacted you and we asked for your opinion on this, and you suggested that they weren't worms, but maybe the ground maybe looked a little clay-like, maybe to kind of amend it a little bit. So we've done that and we've replanted it. So that's great. So
sometime we need to get an entomologist in to talk about these jumping worms that are, I know, a problem in Minnesota. And of course, you're located in Minnesota. I'm not sure how far north those jumping worms. I've never actually physically seen one, just pictures and videos. What I've seen is they have the movement of a snake, slithering back and forth and wildly slithering. Now, most worms, when kind of exposed to the air, when you dig it up, will do some wriggling.
Yeah.
I didn't think it looked like jumping worms.
No, and some of the videos, the best term I've seen in some videos of jumping worms is the movement is thrashing, because it is very violent.
Yes.
Or it's really just absolutely just like wriggling seems kind of controlled, but this just seems like almost like convulsing. It's very
yeah, that's a good description of it. The thrashing, I like that. And of course, what they do to the soil in the areas where they are infecting, it's been described as they leave the soil like coffee grounds. Now, in our heavy clay soil, gosh, is that so bad? But no, it ruins that soil structure. And what could grow in the soil the consistency of coffee grounds? That would be almost too light and unable to hold water, etc.
And unlike other worms, I understand it doesn't deposit, and it's not as it consumes the ground, it's not leaving behind any good nutrients.
Yeah, because other worms, of course, other worms can be beneficial to the soil. And so, so interesting. So I was kind of happy to see. I didn't think it looked like you had jumping worms.
Yeah, and I think jumping worms also have a white band around them. Or there's a different colored band. This is from looking at videos. Not an expert on this at all.
Again, I thankfully have never actually seen the jumping worm. But yeah, interesting.
Well, because we were lucky enough to contact you, we thought that this would be a good week as gardens are really taking off, as people are super active and noticing things coming up. This would be a good week to open up the mailbag, so to speak.
Yes, and the mailbag was absolutely full. So we appreciate everyone that writes in.
All right. What do you think? Should we do first and last name or just first name? What do you think?
How about first name in case anyone doesn't prefer to have their last name?
Okay. This is Mike from Cokato. And said, last fall I sent you some pictures of the amaryllis that I have grown in the summer. I have approximately 80 bulbs of various sizes, and they multiplied during the season. I remember this. This was a spectacular yard that he showed. He had some wonderful, great amaryllis bulb beds. I thought I would give you a planting date where I am west of Minneapolis. I planted the bulbs on April 17th and covered them much too frequently due to our cool spring. The last two pictures were taken on May 31st. The flower beds have a sunny southern exposure until early afternoon. I enjoy your podcast and columns. Thank you very much, Mike. And so he sends along these pictures that were taken on May 31st.
Yeah, so in a flower bed. In a flower bed. Amaryllis blooming. There's beautiful, kind of looked like almost an apple blossom white and pink type.
This looks like the what you would expect around the holidays.
Exactly.
This is amazing.
And what I really appreciated about this, when Mike wrote in the past, I had never seen or heard of anyone planting amaryllis in a mass planting in an outdoor flower bed. They're typically potted around the holidays, etc., and absolutely beautiful. And so thanks also to one of our podcast listeners who gave me a whole bunch of amaryllis bulbs.
Brenda from the area, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm going to do this. I'm going to plant them, amaryllis bulbs, out in a flower garden. And so I wrote back to Mike and asked them, when you planted them out, and thanks for the planting dates, that helps kind of give me an idea how to do it. I asked, were the bulbs dormant or were they already growing? And he indicated that most were dormant, maybe starting a little extra growth. So that told me that I'm going to keep these amaryllis bulbs in good condition, growing outside, but they have already bloomed. So then I'll winter them, give them dormancy in the winter, and then next year I will plant them in flower bed, kind of following Mike's, maybe modify it a little bit for the Fargo area. And so, it's interesting how we're already talking next year. I'm already planning next year's flower bed. So thank you, Mike, for that. Wonderful tip on an eye-catching, amaryllis in an outdoor flower bed.
And really, you think about it for the time of year when you don't have a lot of color in the garden. And he did that, it was about 6 weeks. So a really kind of a great investment of time to get a real burst of color early in the year. Good
Definitely.
job. Okay, this is from Heather. And Heather writes, "Hi, I'm hoping for some help with our lilac bush. Every year it looks great. It has a ton of leaves, but it hasn't bloomed in probably 8 years. What can I do to get it to bloom again? Thanks, Heather."
Yeah, thanks, Heather, for writing. And so a lilac that isn't blooming, and it sounds like it probably did bloom, the last 8 years it hasn't, but it must have bloomed previous to that. I'm assuming that it's probably an older lilac. And so there are two things that cause a lilac not to bloom. For one thing, sometimes lilacs get planted in a yard, and as time goes on, the shade trees grow and overtop the lilac. So shading is one thing that, and sometimes we don't always realize because we live with our shade trees day to day. But as time goes on, they may have created more shade than one once did. And lilacs really need full all-day sun, or at least probably 6 hours of direct sunshine in order to bloom. So check to see if it is in full sun. The other thing that can cause lilacs not to bloom is how we prune or trim them. Lilacs, by the end of summer, lilacs have already set flower buds for the next spring. And so if we do some trimming in fall on lilacs, we're cutting off the flower buds that would open in May. Or if you do that pruning in early spring, likewise, we're cutting off those big fat flower buds that would be there to open. So shading is one thing, possibility. The other is modify the trimming. Pruning, if they do need shaping or trimming, wait until after they're done blooming and then give them some shaping. And then they'll have the whole season to set flower buds for the following year.
All right. Very good. Okay, this is from Gloria, and Gloria has a question about clear plastic mulch. I listened to you talking about plastic 4 to 6 mils, so that's 4 to 6 millimeter, mulch for melon. Do you recommend the plastic for cucumbers, pepper, and squash? Thanks.
Yeah, so we discussed when Mary Holm and Mike Seahawk were on with us. We discussed clear plastic because Mary had kind of wondered about the clear plastic for growing melons, so we described that. So thanks, Gloria, for asking for a follow-up. So the clear plastic mulch warms up the soil and is especially beneficial for crops that are a little borderline in our reduced season. Okay, watermelons and muskmelon. They're long season crops. And of course, the earlier we can get a watermelon to ripen, or muskmelon, the quicker we can enjoy it. And so instead of waiting for the end of September, clear plastic mulch creates a greenhouse effect over the soil, warms the soil up. The muskmelons and watermelon think they're in Georgia, and so they produce their fruit quicker. This was based on research done at NDSU in the 1960s and 70s for how market gardeners could get a good, good saleable crop of melons for our area. So it's especially beneficial for melons to get them. I'm experimenting with growing sweet potatoes, a southern crop. And so I use a clear plastic mulch on sweet potatoes. And last year, we got a crop of sweet potatoes to grow. So now, Gloria's question, can we use that on cucumbers, squash, things such as that? You could. They are also heat-loving crops. And again, when I say heat-loving, the roots love warm soil. And that clear plastic keeps moisture in, and really it allows the sunlight to penetrate through, creates a greenhouse over the soil, and really warms up the soil well. Okay, but cucumbers, and squash can produce decent crops without that extra step. There'd be nothing wrong with using clear plastics for that, but you get a good crop anyway without. So many people opt not to use clear plastic. I save it for the melons and the sweet potatoes.
So I was out this week that you guys were that week that you guys were talking about this, and when you're talking about clear plastic mulch, do you just mean sheets, plastic sheets? In
Plastic
this case,
sheets.
mulch is not the ground up.
Oh, good question.
Ground up,
Yes.
which I when I read that, I thought, oh, clear plastic mulch is these ground up plastic chips or shredded plastic chips.
Good point, John. Okay, because mulch being a term meaning to cover the soil.
Okay.
So sheets of clear plastic. I buy from the farm supply store rolls of clear plastic. 4 mil, that's the term for the thickness of a plastic. 4 mil. And then that gets put out on a roll in a roll, rolled out onto the soil surface. So, good point. Yeah, we think of mulch, shredded bark mulch is a bunch of
Right.
little crumbs. So, right, so plastic mulch is not that. Plastic mulch is a sheet rolled out over the soil surface. So, I roll it out about 4 feet wide, and then the length of the row that I want to plant. And then so that gets rolled directly in contact with the soil. The edges are weighted down, and then I plant my little melon plants in a slit cut in 2 to 3 feet apart within that row.
All right. Okay, we've got a question here from Jackie. Jackie wants to know, I'm interested in your thoughts on this split willow tree. I adore this tree, but are we at the point where this tree needs to come down? And so she sent
A picture is worth a 1,000 words. So thank you, Jackie, for sending the photo. A big old willow tree, big trunk coming out of the ground, but it looks like at a certain height above ground level, it forked into 2 big main branches, and currently between those 2 forks, there's a large crack in between. And so the question is, what's going to happen? Is that tree safe? Because when you've got a big trunk and it has 2 almost equal big trunks coming out of that and going their each separate way, you can just imagine the stress at that point where the 2 join. And so it has begun to crack. And so the question, is this tree safe? Now, the safety of a tree is a very specialized part of arboriculture. And that's a specialized kind of an enterprise called tree risk assessment. So arborists take special training and become certified in tree risk assessment. So NDSU does not have a tree risk assessor certified. And so I'm not able to make a judgment as to, is that tree safe? So I always refer, and Jackie, I'll refer you to a local arborist. Check the different tree companies that do tree removal, tree servicing, and ask if they have a certified tree risk assessor. And then they look at it, they assess the tree based on the guidelines, the protocol, and then they can determine, yes, it looks like that tree is safe, or it looks like it's going to split apart and fall on your house. So that's a specialized field, tree risk assessment. So I don't give a judgment on that. That's a specialized field. But just picture this big, grand old willow that they've probably enjoyed for many, many years, and then to see a big crack forming down between 2 big main trunks. I can appreciate how the concern, but I can also appreciate the love for that well-established tree.
If you had a tree that started to show a crack in the base or something like this, we're not going to get into risk assessment because, again, we're not qualified to do that. But are there things that you could do? Could you build something kind of like a dome or something to place over that crack, not so tightly, but loose and above, but just so that water and particularly snow wouldn't get in there and freeze and expand that crack?
Exactly, because as moisture gets down in the big cracks of a tree, then it'll stay moist in there, wood rotting fungi enter, and then it begins to rot, and the problem just becomes worse and worse over time. So not only structurally that crack for splitting apart, but also then it's an entry point for disease-rotting organisms. And so one method that used to be used, but it's been proven not helpful, used to fill it with concrete, but concrete just cracks and you can't get a good seal, and so that just kept moisture in even worse. Some people have tried the expanding foam insulation, squirting the expandable foam, but again, it doesn't produce a tight enough seal, so it actually just keeps it more moist in there. An umbrella type situation, a metal cover or something, be worth a try. I still think there'd be enough moisture that gets in. So anytime a person sees a big crack in a tree, it's definitely concerning structurally, and that things could continue to go downhill from that. And so, yeah, it's an interesting thing. Now, some tree cracks, again, consult an arborist, but some tree cracks can be physically bolted together. A threaded rod injected, drilled through the two main trunks, and washers and nuts put on either side, and that whole thing kind of cinched together, better than strapping around the outside that could constrict growth. But a metal rod put through is a way that arborists can try to structurally give some integrity to that tree.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Jackie, and good luck with that. And we're going to take a quick little break. When we come back, more questions from listeners.
Get 3 months of local news for just 99 cents a month. You'll get unlimited access to the news you need to stay engaged and connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe now to get 3 months of local news for only 99 cents a month.
All right, we're back, and this week we're opening up the mailbag for questions from growers, what the things that people have been asking Don about.
Lots of interesting questions.
Well, here's one from Rick. Rick wants to know, is there any way to identify an apple tree? If it's the one everyone wants, it's the one everyone wants in the family. I even eat them, and I don't care for apples. Would like to plant another one or two. And so Rick sends along. Rick is from Page, North Dakota, and he sends along or did he send along a picture?
That one doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he didn't.
He's sending it along because the apple tree hasn't fruited yet.
Sure.
But he's kind of wondering, thinking ahead for when it is harvested, that's the apple that everyone wants. Now, it's interesting. Okay, this is oftentimes a case where maybe a person buys a home and it has an existing apple, and you don't know what that apple is, but the neighbors and everybody and all the relatives say, gosh, that's a great apple. I'd like to plant one like it. Or maybe it's on a farmstead where you lose the tag. You don't remember what the apple tree was that you planted 20 years ago, and everybody wants one. So is there a way to identify what an apple is so that everybody else can plant one too if they want one that it sounds like a great apple? And so the bottom line question is, it's really, really difficult. You can't tell from the leaves the difference between apple cultivars, and so that means you have to depend on when it starts fruiting. But apple fruits, the shape, the colors vary from yard to yard, how the weather is, and so I don't know of anyone who can take a look at an apple and say, oh, that's a Zestar, that's a Honeycrisp, that's a Kindercrisp, etc. They vary too much. If you know when when the fruit is ripe, you can put them into categories. For example, a Haralson apple is not going to be ripe in August. Some apples are ripe in August. So if you know when it's ripe, that limits the choices to maybe a handful or so. So that can help. But when you pluck the apple off the tree, I don't know of anyone that's going to be able to tell you what that is. But again, they can give you some suggestions based on when it's ripe. Okay, but there is an organization, but the website has been taken down because I just checked, but hopefully it'll be back up. Washington State University, Washington's a big apple growing area, of course. Washington State University had an apple analysis test lab. So what you did was you submitted leaves of the apple tree, because each apple cultivar has different DNA. So even though you may not be able to tell by looking at it, the apple leaf DNA is different for each of these cultivars. And they have a data bank of thousands of apple varieties. And so they're able, I believe they're charging about $50 or $75 to analyze it. I think the last I saw on Facebook was it would take a couple of months, so it wasn't a quick turnaround. And so it was called My Fruit Tree. But if you look up University of Washington, how to identify an apple. But again, when I checked it, that website was no longer there. It was a few months ago. I don't know if they became so overwhelmed with trying to identify apples that they had to temporarily shut down. But that DNA analysis is the only sure way of identifying that apple. Again, you could kind of limit it, but I wish there was just a way that say, oh yeah, that's an old Prairie Magic tree that you've got there, and so just everybody go buy a Prairie Magic tree. So unfortunately, it's not that simple. It's really difficult.
All right. Well, good luck with that. So this is a question from Ashley. She says, hi, Don. I have some vines that I keep from year to year to use in my outdoor pots in the summer. After the fall, I bring them inside and they tend to, quote unquote, sleep over the winter, and most of them fall off dead. But the plant is still alive. The ends are starting to regrow again. I'm wondering if I should cut them shorter so the leaves start to fill out in the middle section of the vines. If so, where should I start cutting them? When I bring them in the fall, should I be cutting the vines shorter before they start dying off? Any recommendations for this process is appreciated. What are these vines called? And this is from Ashley. So Ashley, great question.
Okay, and the photo shows, and it looks like probably one of the, well, actually there aren't enough leaves on there really to identify, but like many of us, many of us save these, so thanks, Ashley, for sending this. Many of us in the fall of the year take in, before frost, we take in some of the vining things that were in our planters, because if you bring those in, they can be kept almost like a house plant. I've done that with sweet potato vine, and this looks like a relative of the maybe Purple Heart, possibly. I see a little purplish. And so some of these vining foliage type things can be wintered indoors and then taken back out to your summertime containers. But they get kind of rangy, spindly over winter is a common thing. And so, yes, the bottom line, cut it way back. Cut off all those strangly, is that a word, straggly vines, and cut it back and let the growth come kind of from the base of the plant. And so a good haircut, cutting all the way back, and then it will rejuvenate from the stems from the lower part. So it'll look good once again.
So is that something that she wants to start doing now? It doesn't look like, because there's already leaves on there.
Yeah, I would still go ahead and trim it back. Yep. So that and it'll burst forth with the nice long days of late spring and summer here. It'll burst forth, and so a good pruning haircut, I think, will rejuvenate it.
All right, Ashley, we'll enjoy your vines this summer. This is from Christy. Christy says, I have a new garden site that didn't produce last year. Most of my produce grew tops only. No radishes, carrots, cucumbers, squash, or melons. The vines grew but didn't produce any fruit or very little. Prior to garden, this was a wooded area with pine trees. I'm wondering if the soil was too acidic. What can I add to it? I did till a lot of peat the first fall. I did till in a lot of peat the first fall. Suggestions for what more I can add? This is from Christy.
So two things could be going on there. One could be that the area is too shaded. So I'll follow up and ask, is it getting enough sunshine? Most vegetables would like all day full sunshine, or at least probably 6 hours of direct sunshine. So indicate that a wooded area. So I'm wondering if some of the area is too shaded, because in shade, sometimes vegetables will grow their leaves fine. They just won't produce much fruit or root. And so that can sometimes happen. So looking at the full sun level. The other thing, too, could be if the soil is too rich in especially nitrogen. Nitrogen is the fertilizer element that we put on our lawns to get good leafy growth on our lawns. But also, if a soil is too rich in nitrogen, you could get a lot of leafy type growth at the expense of fruiting or root formation for carrots and radishes and etc. So this would be a good case for a soil test. A soil test can be sent to University of Minnesota or Agvise, Agvise. So just look up each of those. I think a soil test would be important for this. But again, look to make sure that that garden spot is getting full sun. If it isn't getting enough sun, then maybe a person would need to relocate. The situation of the wondering if the needles cause too much acidity in the soil. Actually, that's kind of an old tale that has been debunked through soil tests. Evergreen needles are slightly acidic until they break down, but that acidity is quickly broken down, and so evergreen needles do not make the soil too acid in which to grow everything.
All right. Well, Christy, good luck with this year. And yeah, Don's going to follow up with you. So hopefully that helps you so you have a better year this year. This is from Adam. He's got a question about a honey locust. Says, I noticed it wasn't blooming later than my other 2 honey locust trees, so I took a closer look. The previous owner had placed a fake plastic base around the bottom of the tree, and after removing it, I noticed a white liquid near the base of the trunk. He sent along some pictures. I was wondering if this is some type of a fungus or something that needs treatment, if it's normal. Thanks. This is from Adam.
So a concern that kind of and I know what he means. You can get these plastic kind of cover type things to put in a circle around the tree. A person has to be very careful because they can quickly constrict the tree because they don't have a lot of give. And so he sent photos that ring has been removed. And I asked him in a follow-up email to do a little digging down at the base of that tree because the planting depth is really, really important on these trees. And I was a little concerned that it had been planted too deeply. Honey locust is a nice shade-type tree. But if you take a look at shade trees, they have a natural flare at the bottom where the trunk goes into the ground. They widen out a little bit, and so that's natural. If a tree goes into the soil like a telephone pole, straight as a telephone pole, it's possible that they were planted too deeply or there's been too much soil brought up around the trunk. And the mention was of kind of a whitish substance, which kind of looked like a fungal type growth. So my concern was that the tree had been planted too deeply years ago and that there might be some fungal rotting happens. And that's what happens if a tree is planted too deeply. That bark was not meant to be that deep, so you can get some fungal rotting on that bark. So he wrote back, and after he had brushed away some soil from around the trunk, and after he removes that soil, now we can see where the trunk widens off. So there was probably, 4 inches or so too much soil placed around that tree. So the preferred would have been so that as that honey locust entered the ground, there was a widened flare that was visible above ground. So taking away that extra soil will be important. If that was left on, that would shorten the tree's life by encouraging rotting to happen on that. So I believe the tree was caught in time. There's also quite the pictures. You can see in the picture a fairly long vertical crack up the tree, and that is also a symptom of a tree that's planted too deeply. That
really?
It can begin a bark crack in that. And so again, when we plant a tree, it's important that flared part be visible above ground level. And so I think he caught this tree in time. Otherwise, we have done autopsies on trees that have failed after only maybe 15 years or so, and we oftentimes will find that they were just planted too deeply. Even just 3 inches or so is enough to shorten the lifespan of that tree.
All right. Well, Adam, thanks for the note, and good luck with hopefully that you, like Don said, hopefully that this was caught in time and your tree lives to a nice, full, mature age. Okay, we're going to take another quick break, and we come back some more with questions.
If you're loving this podcast, be sure to check out our full lineup. From news and local politics to sports and true crime, find your next great listen right now at inforum.com/podcasts. That's inforum.com/podcasts.
All right, we're back, and this week we're reading letters from listener letters, people who have questions for Dawn about what they, questions about things that they're noticing in their yard, trees, lawn, flowers, everything. Here's one. This is from Alice in Osage. She writes that I am left to care for the family farm in Osage, Minnesota. I moved over in 2021, and I got 25 native grasses and flowers and 6,500 trees planted to stay in the CRP program. Well, that's great.
Yes.
That's impressive. I would really like to have you and your wife or John or whomever come over and give me some ideas for trees, bushes, and things to add to the farmstead. Well, okay. We don't get invited over to houses a lot.
No,
this is
do
a
not.
new one. I have completed restoring the Sears ordered farmhouse and live here now. I'm in the process of cleaning out the grove and making it into an oak savanna. My kids and I garden every year for the love of it and to help with the cost of food. Would love to have a knowledgeable person look at my situation and give ideas of what to add. Okay, this is really interesting.
Well, I love the invitation. That is so awesome. And it's interesting. My main county of responsibility with NDSU Extension is Cass County, and the population has grown now to over 200,000. And so I'm outnumbered. Yeah. I get many requests for site visits, but thanks be to email and email photos. I'm no longer able to make site visits because there's too many requests for those. And so luckily, emails and photos get me to people's yards without actually having to physically go to yards, which there just isn't time for. But I really appreciate that. It's such a kind invitation.
Well, Dawn, sounds like you're going to have to turn that one down. But, I am not as limited to that. It sounds like she's got a fascinating story. Maybe I'll go out there and do a little story on Alice and her property there.
Oh, that sounds like a great.
I will let you know, and I will ask you for your advice, even though you can't visit that. Maybe we can work on something all the same.
Yeah, we'll collaborate. Yeah, right. That was a generous invitation.
Yeah, very nice. This is from Karen. She has got a question about sandy soil. Dawn, my daughter lives in Wyoming, Minnesota. She comes from a long line of gardens and works so hard, but what can she do with that sandy soil? It just doesn't produce like our North Dakota soil. She built 2 raised beds, and those do well, of course, but the Minnesota ground, not so much. This is from Karen. Advice for Karen.
In our soil, like for example, the Red River Valley, it's heavy clay and it's difficult to garden in. But talk about a rich soil. North Dakota, the breadbasket of the world, and it produces such wonderful crops. And even in gardening, I struggle with the clay texture of the soil, but wow, does the soil produce? The heavy soil holds nutrients well. Lighter soils, the nutrients tend to wash out more rapidly, and so yes, I can understand that in a sandier type soil, it's the soil not being maybe able to hold the nutrients as much. It can be maybe a little more of a challenge, but the antidote is organic material, which for heavy clay soil like mine, the organic material helps make it more workable. In a sandier soil, such as the writer indicated, the sandier soil, the organic matter can give a little more structure, so it can both hold moisture better, and it also increases the nutrient holding capacity, so that the fertilizer that you apply is able to kind of stay instead of being just washed quickly down out of the root system. So organic material is the antidote for that. An organic material, compost, bags of rotted manure that are fairly easy to get at garden centers, peat moss, leaf mold. I go out into our tree. We're lucky enough to have a tree belt by ours, and there's wonderful kind of composty kind of decomposing leaf litter there.
Okay.
That's wonderful, added on in. So if you're in an area wooded Minnesota where you have access to maybe some tree belts or something, that good forest floor material is wonderful to incorporate some of that into your plantings too. So it's all about organic material.
All right, good advice. This is from Tim. I have planted these trees a couple of summers ago, but they don't seem like they are getting any taller. Any idea why? And so Tim sent a lot of photos.
Yeah,
and
sends photos.
He's got some kind of pine trees
young spruce trees. The
trees.
shorter needle indicates spruce trees. And one of them shows he's protecting nicely with chicken wire around.
Cage around it, so
and
they're
it
not
looks
gonna
like they're
eat them.
probably in the neighborhood of maybe 2 feet tall or so, I'm guessing, 18 inches, 2 feet maybe. But the first thing I notice is they're growing in grass. And grass is a huge competitor. Grass uses the moisture, uses the nutrients, and the little evergreens get the leftovers. And so the best thing that could be done, it will increase by at least twice the rate of growth of these evergreens is, and you don't even need to take the grass away, but just smother the grass. I use cardboard, sheets of cardboard laid down, overlapped, and then a shredded type wood mulch over the cardboard. You could remove the grass around, physically dig out the grass if you wanted, but it will quickly disintegrate under smothering. And so the best thing you could do would be I would put a 5-foot diameter circle around these trees to get them so the grass is not a competitor anymore. And maybe give them in the meantime, a little bit of fertilizer. Could be a water-soluble type. I'd put a 5-gallon bucket slowly poured around those, give them some good nutrition, or a granular type fertilizer to help replace some of the nutrients that the grass has already robbed. So you can double the rate of growth by not having the grass as a competitor.
All right, good advice. I wouldn't have thought about that. That's why people ask you, because you know these things.
We're all in this together.
But good things to learn. So if people have more questions for you, this has been a lot of fun and very enlightening. If people have questions for you, any other questions, people are sending you questions all the time, but those who haven't yet, what's the best way to reach you?
Send an email, donald.kinsler, Kinzler, at ndsu.edu. And thank you. Every so often we'll, I answer the questions as they come in, but every so often, we'll gather a group together and do the online email.
Well, and people, if you can send in photos and even videos sometimes, if need be, photos of your situation, that helps so much. Because like Don just said, had he just said, I planted these pine trees, they're not growing, do you know why? It could be a number of different things, but Don was able to look at this and say, well, there's still grass there.
The photo immediately shows they're growing in grass, and there we have it. So those photos are so very, very important. And when you do send a photo, for example, of a tree, 2 photos are very helpful. If there's an issue with the leaves or needles, a close-up of that, but also one picture taken standing back so a person can see the entire tree or plant. That gives a good idea of what the overall health of that tree or plant is.
Yeah, and seeing the surroundings, too.
Exactly.
And everything, too. Like the earlier question, too, about the woman who started a garden plot on what had been a wooded area. Still not sure if it's still shady, so good thing to know.
Exactly.
All right, Don. Well, thanks a lot, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you, John. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and have a good week.